6 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Pursuant to Standing Order 108.3G and the motion adopted by the committee on Friday, October 21st, 2022, the committee is meeting today in relation to its study on the Green Government Strategy. I'm not sure if this is right. No, that's not right. Sorry, today we are here with the Auditor General.
Yep. Just 1 second. That's why you should always read your notes in advance. This is a briefing session we're going to have on the Office of the Auditor General. So I'm just going to jump in to our witnesses. From the Office of the Auditor General, Karen Hogan, Auditor General of Canada. Andrew Hayes, Deputy Auditor General. Good to see you both here in person. From the Department of Finance, Nicholas Leswick, Associate Deputy Minister. Good to see you again. Treasury Board Secretariat, by video conference, Stephen Diot, Executive Director, Employment Relations and Total Compensation, Strategic Compensation Management, Office of the Chief Human Resources Officer. Only the Auditor General has an opening remarks. I will check back with the other two witnesses just to see if they want to respond to anything once the AG is finished up. So, Ms. Hogan, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Over to you, please.
Mr. Chair, thank you for this opportunity to update the committee on the funding of the Office of the Auditor General of Canada and the effects of the recent strike. I would like to acknowledge that this hearing is taking place on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. In March 2021, our office received $25 million of additional permanent funding. With this new funding, we hired additional staff and now employ almost 800 employees. We also increased the number of performance audits we produce in a year from an average of 14 before receiving an increase in our funding to more than 20 in the 2022-23 fiscal year. We expect to be able to deliver even more audit work in the years to come. Our current budget is enough for our office to operate at its present and planned levels. However, when new mandates are added without additional funding, it can eventually result in the situation our office experienced in the past, which contributed to the significant funding shortfall. For example, since receiving additional funding, the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development has been given the responsibility to report regularly under the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act. We also have new audit work to do for the Canada Enterprise Emergency Funding Corporation and the allocation of proceeds of Canada's green bonds for the Department of Finance Canada. This is important work for us to do. In the future, we would ask that our funding be considered when new work is added. In our view, it is important that a long-term, stable funding mechanism is established to preserve our independence and our capacity to respond to an evolving environment. There are examples in other jurisdictions that may be helpful to explore, with the view of ensuring predictable funding for our office, given our role in supporting Parliament as it holds the government to account. It is problematic for us to have to request money from the Department of Finance Canada and the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat, which are organizations we audit. In our view, a funding mechanism that includes parliamentary oversight would be preferable. J'aborderai maintenant le récent conflit de travail.
Turning now to the recent labor dispute, which included a 6-week general strike by about 165 of our employees in the Audit Services Group. As the committee may know, the President of the Treasury Board gives our office its mandate for collective bargaining. This mandate establishes the maximum amount of pay and specifies the other terms and conditions of employment that may be offered by our office during collective bargaining. At times, the mandate includes how our office is to approach negotiations. It's also important to note that the additional permanent funding we received in March 2021 could not be used to expand the collective bargaining mandate. In other words, we cannot use our annual budget as a source of funds for a collective agreement. The strike had far-reaching effects. Internally, there was a significant effect on the mental health and well-being of all of our employees. In addition, we experienced an unusually high rate of departure in the audit services group. While we have since hired new employees, and we continue our efforts to attract and recruit new talent, this remains a challenge in the current environment, with the lingering effects of the labor conflict. In addition to the effects on our staff, the response to the labor dispute had resulted in delays in some of our audit work and operations. For example, we delayed the release of our spring 2022 reports. In addition, we temporarily slowed some large corporate initiatives, including our transformation. Our ability to spend our budget in the 2021-2022 and 2022-2023 fiscal years was also affected. The effects of the strike on our people, culture, and working environment will be felt for some time. Moving forward, we will pursue conversations with employees across our office to identify steps to take to renew the workplace and foster a healthy, safe, inclusive, and productive environment. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening remarks. We would be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Just going to check because I said I would. I don't expect there's any comments from Mr. Lestwick. No. And Mr. Diot, I expect probably not, but I said I'd check with you. So nope, that's perfectly reasonable, and you are under no obligation, and you'd indicated there would not be an opening statement. So I'm going to turn to our first round, which gives each of the first four members 6 minutes. And Mr. McCauley, you have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and A.G. Hogan, welcome back. Mr. Hayes, welcome back. Long time no see. I think it's been just a couple days. This seems like a never, like the movie, The Never-Ending Story. How long has your office been requesting additional resources?
So the initial request that my predecessor, Michael Ferguson, made was back in 2017. He received a portion of the funding that he had requested in 2018, and then we repeated our requests in every year thereafter until we received funding. I put in a request for $25 million, and we received all of that in 2021.
What would happen if you hadn't received that extra funding?
Well, we would have continued to function at the level we were. At that time, we were providing approximately 14 performance audits to Parliament in addition to the 90 financial audits that we do, as well as 3 to 5 special exams in a year. So we would have only been able to maintain that level. But as I mentioned in my opening remarks, there were some additional work that was given to us. For example, the Commissioner of the Environment received additional work, and then an additional financial mandate was added. So that would have to come from existing capacity if we had not received funding.
Well, that was my next question, is how much did this added work affect and the added directives affect your work schedule? And I just want to follow up, like every year, of course, you go cap in hand for more money and eventually it is delivered, but how does it affect your short and long-term planning, knowing that this money is not guaranteed, that you have to go every year for this extra funding to fulfill your mandate?
So I guess I should inform that I did not request any additional funding after that 25 million was received. As I mentioned, I believe that that funding is
past
good for our
years.
current.
Okay.
So we went every year from 2017 until we received it in 2021, yes.
Okay, so, up until 2021, did it affect your long-term planning or your short-term planning, knowing they could say no?
Well, absolutely, it affected our planning in that whenever we had additional work that was legislated to us, we had to reduce work that was discretionary. And the discretionary work is our performance audit work, which is the main work that parliamentary committees studies. So it has an impact on our ability to deliver to Parliament and help Parliament fulfill its role in holding the government to account.
How should the funding model be done? It should be similar to, say, the parliamentary budget officer or ethics, where it's basically, I guess you request money from the House or from the Speaker, as opposed to going through TBS and Finance?
Well, there are a few models out there. I think it's important to note that not every agent of Parliament is the same, and so not necessarily the same funding mechanism should be used across the board for all agents of Parliament. There are examples in the provinces or internationally that we could look to.
If you had your way with us, how would it be done?
So if I had my way, well, geez, where should I start with the wish list? But no, I'll
For the funding.
for the funding
Ideally.
mechanism. I do believe that there is a role where central agencies need to still be involved because they do set the budgeting of expenditures in the government. But I do believe that Parliament should also have a role in setting that to help support the independence of not only our office but any agent of Parliament. So I would believe that this committee, in the case of our office, could play that role, or another committee could be set up that could oversee all agents of Parliament. There are many options to explore, and I'd be really happy to do that with any working group that would
I've
like to.
often heard it, and you touched upon it in your opening statement, I've often heard it described as a conflict of interest requiring the Auditor General to request money from the people they will be possibly auditing. Is that a kind of a correct summation of the issue?
Well, it's difficult for sure if we issue an opinion or complete an audit that doesn't have positive results on one of the central agencies. It does potentially impact our independence, absolutely. I think it's more of a perception of an issue with independence. So I think that's why to have a mechanism where we can ensure that that independence and the perception of it is maintained would be preferable.
Well, I think that's very important. I don't think anyone is suggesting, at least around this table, that Finance or TBS would act in that manner. But the perception of independence, I think, is very, very important for the Auditor General's office. Mm-hmm. So is that, again, we could eliminate that perception of a conflict if we change the funding mechanism?
Well, going through my schooling and working as a CPA over the years, we were always taught that independence is the cornerstone of our profession, but that the perception or lack thereof is almost worse than the reality. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that any time we can fix that and ensure that not only the perception but the reality of independence is there, that we should take that step if possible.
Right. I think Angus Reid and some other polling companies have released rather dismal results of people's trust in government, and all levels of government across the country has been dropping significantly. I think this is part and parcel of it. Again, just agreement from you that changing the funding model to be straightforward independence of finance would strengthen the role of the Auditor General and your office.
I think that every Canadian should be able to have confidence in the independence and objectivity of the Auditor General, whether it be provincial, municipal, or federal. And so anytime we can encourage independence,
very much. Thank you. When you're asked the time, it's 30 is the answer time too, Mr. McCauley. It's not just the question time. No, you've had your time. I'm going to turn now to Ms. Bradford. You have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses today. So continuing along that line of questioning for the Auditor General, your office is one of the most highly regarded by Canadians. You are one of the most trusted institutions. How have you been able to do that within the current framework?
So our organization follows very rigorous processes and standards to ensure our independence and objectivity when we carry out audits, when we interact with departments. And so all the funding has done is cause us to reduce some of our work in the past that we're now slowly ramping up. But as I mentioned in responses to the previous questions, it is about the perception of independence, but also the need to not turn to organizations that we audit in order to request funding, right? That there should be objectivity in establishing funding levels, and that's where I see Parliament, this committee perhaps, or another committee playing a real active role in that.
So thank you for that answer. So you did confirm previously in your opening statement that you did receive the $25 million that you asked for on December 13th last year. So your office only had a 1% increase from 2006 to 2015. Did that affect the ability of your office to achieve its mandate over that decade?
Well, absolutely. It impacted our ability to deliver the volume of work that Parliament expected from us. So we did prioritize work that was included in legislation. So the work that we do on the Public Accounts of Canada, the work that we do on the Public Accounts of the Territories, all of the financial audits that were legislated in acts, we ensured that we carried those out, and then we were able to deliver approximately 14 performance audits, which include one to each of the territories, and then the rest to the federal government. So it just reduced the volume of work, but was still allowed us to maintain that independence and deliver high quality work that Canadians and Parliament could rely on.
So according to the public accounts, then you've now had over a 40% increase in the funding since 2015. So how has this helped your office achieve its mandate?
So with that funding in the past few years, we were able to hire additional employees. We are about 800 now. Throughout the pandemic, we hired about 150 with the additional funding. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, we are gradually increasing all of the performance audit work that we do. I think this year we expect a little over 20 reports and even more in the coming year as we finish some of our onboarding and we get started on some of the additional work we plan to do. So I think that the Parliament will see an increase in that work and then it'll level off somewhere around 25 audits or so. But I caution looking at the numbers because a performance audit isn't a one-size-fits-all. Some can be really small, some can be much larger, and if we just count the numbers, it's probably not a true representation of the level of work that we're providing to Parliament.
And you do independently decide what audits you're going to perform, is that correct?
Again, that's a cornerstone, I think, of our independence, that we get to decide where we go, when we go, and who we audit. But we do consider requests from committees and motions in the House. But it does rest with me to decide in the end where we will audit.
And that's important because of your independence.
Absolutely. It's an important element of our independence and to ensure that the government doesn't influence what we audit and when we audit things.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. So the Office of the Auditor General is a separate agency under Schedule 5 of the Financial Administration Act, so it conducts its own negotiations with unionized employees and determines compensation levels for non-unionized employees. Can you please explain how that works?
Oh, so in our case, it's quite unique. The Auditor General Act sets out that I can set the terms and conditions of all of the employees that work for my office, except when they are represented by a bargaining agent, and then we receive our mandate from the President of the Treasury Board. And so that mandate is similar to a mandate that any other department would receive. And it sets out what I'll call the sort of the fence around what we can negotiate within, and that's their monetary and non-monetary elements of compensation. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I can't use my funding to make that a larger fence. I have to work within the same parameters as every other department in the government.
Okay. And what is the relationship between the OAG and the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development?
The Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development is a senior member of my executive team. I'm required to appoint him. I have appointed him for a period of 7 years. Jerry DeMarco, he started in 2021. So he is an Assistant Auditor General within my office and helps support me carrying out my mandate, but really with a focus on environmental and sustainable development aspects. But he also has certain legislative requirements and other acts, in addition to the work that he has to do to support me under the Auditor General's Act.
So he's a direct report to you then, is he?
Yes, he is.
Okay, that's great. So.
About 10
Mr.
seconds.
10 seconds? I guess I'm done, thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Maintenant, Madame Sinclair Desgagnés.
We'll now go to Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés. You have 6 minutes. It was interesting to hear your comments from the outset. I think these are very important sessions for this committee, and it's good to hear how things are going at the Auditor General's office, because we're at a time where public spending, we're higher than normal. We just come through a pandemic. It's not finished, but there were irregular expenditures that are being pointed out. But this is also a time where confidence in our public institutions is fragile, to say the least. So the combination of these aspects, or these elements, is that the work of the Auditor General is of the utmost importance for the future of our democracy. Now, today, our colleagues up above us are debating a motion that was put forth by the Conservative Party, which seeks to call upon your office, you and your office, to produce a report on the contract that was granted to the companies that developed ArriveCAN, the application. It also calls for you to make it a priority. Now, there are a number of things that we could ask of the Auditor General. That's one example that was chosen for sometimes dubious reasons, but at least it is something that's asking the Auditor General to do work that is necessary. There's another example. We've talked about it a great deal. It's the crossings at Roxham Road. So the independence of the Office of the Auditor General is very important. I'd like to underscore the contribution that you make when it comes to confidence that people have in an institution. So your work is crucial. But you also work to ensure that the departments are held to account, and that's essential. And I said the departments, I carefully chose that word, because unfortunately, a huge part of what comes from the federal government goes through the Crown corporations. And this will take me to my question. Now, we've seen that Crown corporations are often used by the government to send amounts to projects without necessarily going through the department and without the same level of accountability. So this is my question for you. Now, with my team, we've gone through a number of reports on accountability and best practices. When we think that some countries have more advanced models, and I'll give you a few examples here. First of all, and some people will be very happy because I'm going to read an excerpt from the OECD report, and I'm going to be reading it in English.
Enterprises should be as transparent towards the general public as a publicly listed corporation is expected to be towards its shareholders. Ce que ça veut dire, c'est que finalement,
So what that means is that expenditures made by Crown corporations must be as transparent as publicly traded companies' actions are to their shareholders, and especially towards the Canadian public. What would you need? This is my first question. What would you need as Auditor General in terms of additional tools to analyze the expenditures for the Crown corporations in the same way that you do for departments? What tools would you need? Answer. My office audits most of the Crown corporations. We look at the annual financial accounts, but we don't do performance audits in the same way that we do for the various departments. We have special examinations that come under the Act every 10 years, but we look at processes with respect to management for the corporation. So we ensure that there is accountability at Crown corporations, but compared with accounting standards, not with respect to all of the information that's made public through the public accounts. So what would we need to do a better job? Well, it might be a change to legislation with respect to our mandate for special examinations to give us more flexibility to deal with the very small Crown corporations. Because, for example, a museum faces the same type of examination as the CMHC. And that's a very big organization compared with a very small one with few employees. But it's up to the government to make that decision if they want more information on Crown corporations than is being published at present. But you have 10 seconds left. Well, I'll just forego my last 7 seconds and thank you. Thank you.
I have the floor for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank the witnesses for being present with us today, especially our Auditor General, Ms. Hogan. Thank you very much for your testimony this morning or this afternoon. I think it's important that we look at the conditions that took place in your office last year. I believe what we've seen and witnessed with the strike at the Auditor General's office is of concern and should be of concern to the government and should be of concern to all Canadians. The efficiency and effectiveness of our public service, in particular the independent bodies of our public service, and the credibility of them really matter when we're talking about what my previous colleagues had mentioned, which was the fragility of trust between Canadians and our institutions, that we actually do the work of making sure these institutions can, in fact, have the funding and have the resources to do the job that Canadians want them to do. Many of these supports, for example, were not just in the Auditor General's office, but right across the public service. We've seen Canadians rely on public servants, whether that was getting CERB checks out or making sure that other aspects of the public social safety net were actually being utilized. There was real people behind that, real Canadian public servants. But simultaneous to the thank yous that we heard from across the country, from regular Canadians, but even from elected officials, what simultaneously happened was this unfortunate reality where we've seen that work not get the same level of credit. And I am incumbent on me, being a Labour representative in some ways, that we look at the conditions that arose to that. And so I think what we've witnessed in the Auditor General strike last year is something that we should all take as a fair warning as to what could continue to take place in and around our public service across Canada. In your comments, Ms. Hogan, you mentioned, quote, "As the committee may know, the President of the Treasury Board gives our office its mandate for collective bargaining. This mandate establishes the maximum amount of pay and specifies the other terms and conditions of employment that may be offered by our office during collective bargaining. At times, the mandate includes how our office is to approach negotiations. It is also important to note that the additional permanent funding we received in March 2021 could not be used to expand the collective bargaining mandate." And so you can see when approaching the collective bargaining process, how difficult that could be, not only for the Auditor General's office, given the fact that the Auditor General used the word fence, and I'll use that word too, had to operate within a fence and corral decisions, made it difficult for the public service to actually get what they needed to in a responsible way. And we've seen evidence of this. For example, what had happened was we had seen complaints given to the Auditor General's office throughout that time. Many, I'm sure, Ms. Hogan, we don't have to go through today about certain aspects of the work, particularly within wage increases and the lack thereof wage increases. But what we also seen was a request for arbitration at times to deal with the items that could in some ways not be reasonably dealt with at bargaining. And so I think the questions I have is when the employer consistently refused at that time, which was in this case your office, who made the decision to do that, to decline arbitration at that time?
So at the time, and it was my first foray in a labor dispute, so I'm going to turn to Andrew in case he does want to add anything to make sure that I've gotten all right. At the beginning of a negotiation process, the union must decide on one of two routes, and one is either conciliation strike route, and the other is an arbitration route. I believe those are the two terms. And so the union chose the conciliation strike route, and so that's set out at the beginning, and it sets out if a dispute is if an impasse is reached, then that's the route and the road we go down versus going to arbitration. I believe at some point during the labor dispute there was a request to change that, but again it was a little outside of our hands to do that because that route had been chosen, and when we discussed it with Treasury Board, we were to respect the choices that the union had made at the outset.
Interesting. So you can see, of course, the perspective of the workers in your office given that unique decision, in the sense that you approached Treasury Board for a decision relative to a decision you may have had the power to make. And so for Canadians' sake, we have to know exactly who the decision makers are, in particular in advance of collective bargaining, right? And so in this case, it's important that workers know exactly who's making the decisions in relation to their wages. That's a fairness principle in Canada. And so would you say that your decision, whether to accept arbitration or not accept arbitration, especially given the fact you just testified that you approached Treasury Board on this, was there interference from Treasury Board in the decision related to arbitration?
I know that you want to add, but I guess the result is that if the outcome would have exceeded the mandate that we had been given, it was an outcome that we couldn't put forward to get approval. So I think that really is what hampered our
You knew you weren't going to
decision.
get approval.
Well, not that I didn't know I wasn't going to get approval about arbitration. It's just if the result would have been outside of the mandate that had been given to our organization, and I had put that forward eventually for approval by the president of the Treasury Board, it was clear that we had to stay within the mandate. So I couldn't guarantee that arbitration would have gone there, and that's what we were trying to understand when we approached.
So in some sense,
Treasury
it
Board.
sounds like your hands were tied in some ways by Treasury Board, in the sense that even if you wanted to take the arbitration route, you couldn't.
Expand?
Yeah, I might just add a little bit here to help get to the end of this. The challenge with the process is that negotiations happen with a particular framework in place, and at the beginning of our process, we have a mandate. As we get towards the end, and many of the issues at play have been resolved on one side, but there is a remainder. At that point in time, we checked with the Treasury Board about the process that has been used across the government in the past, because it creates a difficult situation to arbitrate after a lot has already been set apart because it's been sorted out.
But not impossible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes. I'm going to have to end it there. Mr. Desjardins, you'll have another round coming up shortly. Thank you very much. Turning now to our second full round. Mr. Cram, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Ms. Hogan, in your opening statement, you talked about funding mechanisms from other jurisdictions that could be explored. Do you have any particular in mind that would be of particular value for the committee to investigate or look at?
I think I'll give some high-level remarks, and if you want some more specifics, I think that Andrew could probably propose them. But as I said earlier, I think at a high level, a central agency still should play a role, given that they have a very important role in budgeting expenditures. But that Parliament needs to play a role to ensure independence. So, the setting of the levels should come from a parliamentary committee. Whether it be this committee for me, for my office, or another committee for other agents of Parliament, or a general committee for all of us, however the structure happens. And we see that in other jurisdictions. Some of the provinces have that, for example, Ontario. Some of the other agents of Parliament have that. And then internationally, I think I would point to the United Kingdom. So I don't know if you want more specifics. That I would ask Andrew maybe to give you a bit more specifics if you're interested.
Thank you. Yes, the United Kingdom has a model that is interesting. It has a public accounts commission, which is similar in principle to what we have here with this committee. And that commission reviews the estimates, lays it before the House of Commons with any modifications that the commission considers to be appropriate. At the end of the day, I would bring us back to the legacy report of the previous Public Accounts Committee that talked about a permanent, stable, sustainable funding model that gives predictability.
Okay, very good. And Ms. Hogan, I believe you mentioned a while ago that you currently have about 14 performance audits a year, and you want to increase that until it levels off at about 25. So I can't help but conclude that there must be some blind spots right now that the Auditor General's office is not auditing. Can you shed some light on what these new 11 audits per year will be looking at?
So we averaged about 14 a year. That would have been in the 3 years prior to us receiving the funding, which was less than we normally used to do. And yes, we do see a gradual increase this coming year and hopefully again next year. I guess blind spots is a weird way to describe it. It depends what we prioritize in a given year. So, for example, we received a motion from the House to look at all of COVID programs, and so we had to pause other work to do that, and now we sort of returned to that work. So I think when we look ahead as to the kind of skills we might need, I think cyber will come up as an area that we need to really focus on going forward, equity, diversity, and inclusion. But as soon as you pick one element over another, something is falling off the table, right? So it really is about having sort of a plan for the next 2 or 3 years, but then having that plan be somewhat fluid to deal with emerging issues or requests that we would like to prioritize. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that process, Andrew? No.
Okay, very good. And I think your answer touches on my next question then. You mentioned that a performance audit is not one size fits all. And I'm assuming that has to do with some of the skill sets involved in the different areas of government. So can you elaborate on, why an audit is not one size fits all, and what are some of the skill sets that may be lacking and may need to be increased?
So an audit isn't one size fits all for many reasons. It could be the subject matter, but it also could be the scope that we choose to look at in the audit. So for example, we looked at CERB at the beginning of the pandemic, and we just looked at the design and implementation of it. Now we're looking at post-payment. Well, the post-payment side is much larger than the upfront side. So it just takes more time, right? The scope is much larger. So that could be a reason that makes one audit different from another. You asked about skill sets. Well, I'll turn again to IT being an area that's really important. And it isn't just about our skill sets, but it's also about our ability to report in certain things. There may be elements that are difficult to report because of national security or the sensitive nature of the information. And so there's many reasons that might cause one audit to take a little bit longer than another audit, and not necessarily the skill sets that we're missing. When we hired 150 individuals, we tried very hard to target some of the skill sets we thought we would need. We added a lot of expertise in the environment and sustainable development area. We hired a lot on the IT front and cyber front. So we knew where we wanted to go, so we were targeting some of our hires at that time.
And thank you. I'm afraid that is the time, Mr. Cram. Turning now to Mr. Dong. You have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And AG, very good to see you again, and Mr. Hayes as well. My colleague MP Bradford mentioned that between 2005 and 2015, that 10 years, your office only received 1% increase on your budget. And I'm just thinking in my head, given the average Canadian inflation per year is around 1.9 to 2%, that's like taking 19% of your budget away, within that 10 years, if you add up that way, roughly. And I also heard that you mentioned that your office added 150 people. Now it's the size of 800. Do you know did you have to fire people during that 10 years with 1% increase?
So I'm not sure that I know where the percentage increase came from, but I can tell you that over that time period, we never terminated anyone's employment because of funding issues. We just didn't replace people. So as attrition, there's normal attrition that happens in any organization every year. We just did not replace those individuals. So sometimes we were losing individuals in areas we didn't need to, but that was the best way for us to deal with not having the funding we needed to keep up with the staffing levels that we had.
Do you remember how many staff that you had in 2005? And how many staff you had in 2015?
No, sorry, I don't have that information.
Okay. Maybe if you can give me the numbers afterwards, that'd be good. I want to follow up on what MP Desjardins was asking about. You talked about you receive a mandate before negotiating, but if you had received a mandate increase to pay your workers more in the previous bargaining round, they will have been paid better than other federal organizations, right? And what impact would that have on other federal organizations?
So I think it's important to position where the bargaining happened vis-a-vis the rest of the public service. So because of where we were in the time frame, many of the other organizations had already settled their collective agreements. I believe in December when we wrote to the Public Accounts Committee, it was almost 99% of represented public servants had already reached a collective agreement according to a particular pattern. So the difficulty for us at that point in time is that there is an established pattern. Even if we wanted to be able to deal with our employees with the same wage increase and to solve the wage grid, which was important to us because of the statements that we've made in the past about the importance of accurate pay and timely pay in the context of the Phoenix system. We didn't have the mandate to be able to do that in this round. We worked with Treasury Board Secretariat officials to seek a mandate to increase that still respected the pattern that the government had to.
So let me understand this correctly. If PSAC got a massive salary increase, for your office, which represents like maybe 0.2% of the overall administration, they could, or I think more likely they would go back to insist on the same increase for other bargaining units and who has perhaps already signed a deal. And what kind of impact, what would that look like?
So we are only able to speak about the negotiations that we do with our employees. My colleague from the Treasury Board Secretariat might be able to talk about the broader impact on the public service. But we do know that the collective agreements that are settled at other tables do influence the negotiations that we have at our table.
Well, let me be more specific on this question. You mentioned about 99% already got their deal, and if your office receive a large boost in salary, and what kind of impact does that have on the next round of collective bargaining? And would that undermine the government's credibility, in negotiating in good faith? What's your thoughts on this?
For our office, the important element that we are still dealing with and will be dealing with for a little while is the comparative salaries of people doing similar functions in the public service. So if we were to pay a particular group of employees who are performing a particular function more, I think it would have an impact on the rest of the public service. Likewise, the other way, if the public service pays more, then it's going to affect us, even though we have a different classification level. But again, my colleague from Treasury Board Secretariat might be in a good position to speak to that.
And I'm afraid that is your time, Mr. Dong. Thank you very much. Turning now to Madame Sinclair Desgagnés. Vous avez la parole pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés, you've got the floor. Please proceed. In the Public Accounts Report, which was tabled by our chair a few weeks back in the House, the committee adopted a recommendation talking about the publication of financial states by the Crown corporations so that they would disclose information the same as departments do. Another point, the Commissioner for the Environment said that he was in favor of greenhouse gas emissions being disclosed as part of the greening the government strategy, the same way as departments do. So there are some aspects that come together that lead us to think about the willingness of accountability to be accountable by Crown corporations because it's insufficient. So we're looking at ways to improve and enhance transparency in Crown corporations and reforms that are necessary. So we've already started thinking about that. Now, coming back to the OECD report on accountability, now, Mr. Hayes, you mentioned the UK. As an example, in the UK, departments responsible for Crown corporations publish expended assets, and among other things, they do so in great detail in the same way as their departments do. We have other examples of good practices as well. In Korea, the Department of the Economy and Finance monitors Crown corporations, and the department can issue sanctions if information is not put out. So there could be a new section created at the Department of Finance. In the Netherlands, transparency is very important, and in Finland, each year, a report is published on all Crown corporations with their investment portfolio, their reports, etc. So all that to say that there are a number of countries that are all... You've got 30 seconds left. Well, there's no reason then why Canada shouldn't follow suit, especially because in 2020, Export Development Canada sent $8.1 billion to oil projects out west, which hinders the climate change, our battle against greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you. Excuse me, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just wanted to make sure that that was the time you had.
Or for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my questions for this round will be directed to Mr. Diot, Executive Director, Employment Relations, Total Compensation, Strategic Compensation Management, and Office of the Chief Human Resource Officer. Quite the title, Mr. Diot. Yeah, no kidding, time's up. But we had just heard some scathing testimony from the Auditor General about the fencing, corralling, I'd say interference between her office and the actual bargaining process. She mentioned that she approached the Treasury Board several times for particular aspects of that agreement. And each time it seems that it resulted in the most absolutely catastrophic result, which was strike, which affected the work of this Public Accounts Committee and the work of Canadians to understand the actual transparency work that's required from the Auditor General's office. That quality must be controlled. So when I think about that, of course, I also think about the conversations I had with the President of the Treasury Board at that time, and she actually blamed the Auditor General and said that her hands were tied when it came to that strike, that the Auditor General had no way to control in any way, shape, or form the results of that strike, and that there's the negotiations at the Auditor General's level which resulted in it. So like a canary in a coal mine, Mr. Diot, workers who are following in the footsteps of what had happened at the Auditor General's office are scared to go into the mine, if you understand the reference. So I'll be frank. What was the role of the President of the Treasury Board, Mona Fortier, in the Office of the Auditor General's bargaining during the recent labor dispute which resulted in strike?
About a 1 minute to answer.
Mr. Desjardins, we must have listened to different testimony. I didn't hear scathing. With respect,
I heard scathing, and she also said fence. Describe the fence. What was the role? Who put that fence there?
The challenge that we have is that regardless of how we think of separate agencies as being independent, arbitrators and third parties like public interest commissions see us as one employer. So essentially the fence is the pattern that was set for 99% of the public service. The jobs at the Office of the Auditor General are very similar to jobs in the core public administration. And the pressure, the financial pressure that it could have created by breaking that pattern could indeed have been catastrophic from a financial perspective.
Second question, although I disagree.
You're going to have to wait because you're down to 4 seconds, but we'll get back to you. I assure you of
Mr.
that.
Chair.
All right. Turning now to Mr. Genuis, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I hear a lot from my constituents asking me basic questions like, well, where does all the money go that we send to Ottawa? And Madam Auditor General, you're critical for helping people get to the bottom of these questions and be able to know the answers to them. So we're very invested in ensuring that your office is able to continue to do its job effectively, independently, and with the perception of independence. We're living through a time where, as other members have mentioned, there's declining trust in the current government. There remains a great deal of trust in your office in terms of its ability to raise these questions and to identify whether money is being spent appropriately and whether performance objectives are being achieved. We've also seen in the last few years in particular incredible growth in the size of government. The federal government is trying to do more and more things. They're spending more and more money. The deficits we've seen in recent years have been exorbitant. And it would seem to me reasonable to say that the size of the Auditor General's office should be proportionate to the size of government. That is, if government is trying to do more things than it did in the past, the Auditor General should have the capacity to audit more because there's just more activity going on in government. Would you say that that philosophy that the size of your office should increase in proportion to the size of government in terms of your ability to do audits, is that the philosophy that has guided funding for your office, or is there an expectation that you would maintain the same size and the same capacity to do audits despite the growth in government that we've seen in recent years?
So I think one funding model could be one linked to government spending, but then the reverse is also true, as there's reduction in spending and then you would drive down the size of the office, which I think would not necessarily be in line with the intended goal of ensuring good accountability. So I do think that the spending of the government needs to be considered, because you're absolutely right. As there is more spending, there is more work. We do the financial audit work, and the financial audit work is, if the pool is larger, then it takes a little longer to get that work done. So I would just caution sort of linking it, because then you have ups and downs that are really unpredictable. And then that doesn't ensure a consistent delivery of reports to help support Parliament.
So I guess one way to respond to that is there should be some evenness.
Just 1 second, Mr. Genuis. I'm not going to stop the clock here. Mr. McCauley, Ms. Yip, could you just take the conversation to the side of the room? I don't mind conversations happening, but you do need to pull away. It is distracting to the witnesses and I think even to the members. So back to you, Mr. Genuis.
This is going to be a compelling line of questioning, colleagues. So you better, just.
I would expect nothing less, and you have 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. I guess one way to respond to that is say, of course, there should be a certain evenness. It shouldn't be jumping around erratically. But in a general sense, if government is doubling in size, there should be some over time proportionate growth in capacity to look at the full range then of all these new activities government is doing, and we've seen this through COVID spending. But is it fair to say that as parliamentarians are desperate to see more auditing happen in various areas, and there's a proliferation of scandals and questions around different areas of spending, that your funding has not kept up with those demands and those needs?
I think Andrew will probably add to this, but I know back in 2017, because I was in the office when Mr. Ferguson asked for additional funding. At that time, I believe that government spending had gone up 30% or so. Is that correct? And that our funding had remained stable. So absolutely, that means there's more spending for us to audit on the financial side, but there's new programs for us to audit to help ensure accountability. So I believe your analogy is correct. As government spending goes up, there is a need for us to have more capacity to do more work, or there will be work that we will have to not do in order to cover new programs.
And just to put a fine point on this, who determines how much money you get, and should we have a process whereby your budgets are set more independently?
Well, whether or not we believe we need more funding is something that we initiate, but then the decision as to whether we receive that funding is subject to the same process and mechanism that every department in the federal public.
So it's decided by the
services.
government, essentially. The people that you're auditing get to decide whether you have the resources that you think you need in order to audit them effectively.
So there's central agencies that play a role, but in the end, it goes to Parliament who votes on it, yes.
Right.
Thank you very much. That is your time. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and again, I thank the witnesses for appearing here today on these important questions. I would like to have a better understanding, though, regarding this the mandate for collective bargaining. The Auditor General mentioned that her office needs to work within a mandate, and so I'll address my question to Mr. Diat of the Treasury Board. How does that work? Treasury Board works together with PCO to provide a mandate for collective bargaining. Is this specific to the Office of the Auditor General, or is this the case for every separate agency?
With respect, I think this question would be best answered by my colleague from Finance.
Good to have you there.
Good, thank you for the question.
Order. Please, Mr. Leswick, you have the floor. I said him. You have the floor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, thought I said something wrong there.
No.
Yeah, I mean, just cutting to it, yeah, the mandate is approved by the government, so the president of the Treasury Board submits, a recommendation in terms of the path of the wage. So when I say wage, I mean salary and non-salary adjustments to the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister set the overall kind of macro pattern for the wage envelope, which is then transmitted back to the president of the Treasury Board to, I guess, transact the collective bargaining process.
Sorry, Ms. Shanahan, just hold for 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm getting pulled in different directions here. Oh, my mic. Pardon me. Over to you.
I have the floor. Thank you. Thank
I paused
you.
the clock. Pardon me. My mic was on, and I didn't know that was the case. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. So I am trying to understand, as my colleague, Mr. Dong, was asking about, is the effect of one part of the public service getting a major impact. And I fully understand it's very specialized work in the audit department, and we need the best and the brightest there. But is there not some kind of a balance that needs to happen in the collective bargaining? So how does that affect the government's credibility and in showing that they're negotiating in good faith? I mean, can we have this kind of imbalance? Is that over to you now, Mr. Diat?
Yes, thank you very much. I think what needs to be clarified here is that the roles covered by the bargaining unit at the OAG are very similar to roles right across the public service. So while they do have some occupations that are unique, those unique occupations are not in the bargaining unit. The risk of, after we've signed 99% of the public service to the same terms and conditions of employment, the risk of breaching that mandate would be that it would create pressure right across the public service. And as I said earlier, financial pressure. And as I said earlier, unfortunately, we've had a number of decisions of late where third parties like arbitrators and public interest commissioners don't recognize the distinction of separate agencies. They view separate agencies and the core public administration as having one employer, the Government of Canada.
Directly or indirectly, there could be unfairness in the outcomes of different results. So I'm asking: is it important for federal organizations then to have similar salary bands, so that one part of the federal service can't hog the best and brightest of workers, if you're saying that these skill sets are actually needed across the civil service?
That's exactly correct. There is already a lot of movement across the public service. And if we start creating imbalances, what ends up happening is the unions whipsaw one group against the other and keep ratcheting up wages with the expected financial consequences.
Chair?
You have 45 seconds.
45 seconds. One last question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this or it goes to the Auditor General. So under the collective bargaining mandates provided by the Treasury Board during the year where the strike began, how many other agencies had strikes?
There was only one, to the best of my recollection.
And that was at?
The Communication Security Establishment, which also lasted for about 6 weeks.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I apologize for interrupting you, Ms. Shanahan, but I did not take it away from your time. I made sure it was accurate. Turning down to our next round. Oh, there was a question asked. I do have an answer. The analysts were able to find some information on the annual results reported the Office of the Auditor General in terms of staff levels. In 2005-2006 fiscal year, the office had 577 full-time equivalent employees. And more recently, in 2014-2015 fiscal year, the office had 547 full-time equivalent employees. I believe that question was asked by Mr. Dong, but that's the answer for you. So we do have those numbers. Turning now to the next round, and I'm recognizing Mr. Genuis, but I think you're going to...
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to say I'd like to sub out for Mr. Chambers, who's going to take over for me.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Chambers, you have the floor for 4 minutes and 50 seconds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for appearing here, Ms. Hogan. You can put me down as a supporter of your changing the way you receive your funding and moving it to the parliamentary appropriation. Earlier this year, you were asked about CRA, an audit with respect to the CERB process, and just wondering if you could provide an update, or do you have enough resources to complete that audit? Is that something we can expect by within a few weeks or within a number of weeks?
I believe the audit you're referring to is the one in Bill C2, which was to look at post-payment work for 6 different COVID relief programs. And yes, we are at the tail end of that audit and expect to release it in early December before the deadline, which was supposed to be December 19th.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So the earliest in December is helpful, and I make that point because Parliament's been asked to approve additional dental care plan that is seeking to rely on the same process. So I think it would be very helpful for parliamentarians to have a view into your impartial view on the process the government set up. In 2017, your office also included some performance review metrics of CRA with respect to customer service, call wait times, et cetera. Given we're asking CRA to do a lot more work with respect in the recent years, CERB, dental care, et cetera, wondering if you have the resources to maybe update, kind of check back on how they've been doing since that, because you did have some recommendations, and curious if that's on your map at all on a go forward.
So it's, I appreciate the question because we actually did follow up on it, actually. I've mentioned at this committee a few times that we have an online searchable database. We call it a report on past audits, report on past audit measures. And we pick certain elements of previous audits. And the call center work is one that is included in there. I'm just not sure if that iteration is out in the public yet or if it's coming. Maybe I could get back to the committee with that if you'd like to know. I just don't remember where it is in that process.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Just following on my colleague, Mr. Genuis's earlier comments with respect to the growth in the size of government, we just heard the numbers, 547, about 600 FTEs held flat for a number of years, basically. Government has grown in size in terms of number of FTEs by 1/3 since 2015. Your office has been asked to basically increase its productivity levels with respect to the work that you have to do in terms of the amount of work we're asking you to do. but the government has not really seemed to be keeping productivity levels to any, reasonable degree. I mean, most of the customer service standards across many of the departments are in some cases, the worst they've ever been. Wait times, passports, immigration backlogs. They're doing actually less with more people, and you're doing more with less people on kind of a per capita basis, the work that you're pointing out. Do you think the government needs like a true workforce plan, like a people plan, an FTE plan about how much productivity they're getting from an employee, how much they're planning to hire to accomplish the objectives and the tools, or to carry on what they're trying to do for Canadians? Because it seems to be a little bit haphazard.
So thank you very much for the compliment. I'll make sure that everyone in our organization receives it, because they do work very hard, and they take to heart the work that they do for Parliament. I don't think it's just a work plan, I'll be really honest. There's the need to look at how IT can help with efficiency, and so to just say it's a work plan, it's humans, I think would be wrong. There are so many aspects of the public service that need that human interface because it is service delivery, but there's ways to improve efficiency and effectiveness with other means. So I think it would be wrong to just say it's a human resources work plan that's needed.
Thank you. And so I look forward to any future comments you have on a review that you might do on the government on how it's working on efficiency and productivity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Turning now to Mr. Fragascatos, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to our witnesses today. Auditor General Hogan, as I see here in front of me, the notice of meeting says that the topic of today is the briefing on the Office of the Auditor General. So you'll forgive me if I have just some general questions, or at least begin with a general question. And my colleague, MP Bradford, touched on this. But I think that across the world we see democracies, established democracies, with real questions in front of them about their futures. And crucial to that is the independence of institutions, including offices of Auditors General. How crucial is it that Auditors General remain free to take up issues as they see fit, instead of being pushed in that direction by political parties?
In my view, it's a foundational element to the independence of the Office of the Auditor General, and that is why I believe that the funding mechanism should include Parliament and be free of those departments of which we audit. So I do think every Auditor General will tell you that it is a foundational element. I think this committee actually plays a really important role in that. This committee is one that is meant to be nonpartisan when everyone comes together and stays focused on the spending of the money and the delivering of services. And so it isn't just my office that ensures good democracy, but it is so many elements together that ensure good democracy.
Well, tell me more about that, in fact. We do have, and I'm a relatively new member of this committee, but I've come to see it as the Audit Committee of Parliament, and therefore nonpartisan. Tell me about the importance of this committee remaining nonpartisan.
Well, I've always enjoyed this committee for exactly that reason. We stay focused when we're here on the work at hand. And I believe that this committee is an extension of the good independent work that my office does. I honestly don't believe that anyone in Canada should silence the Auditor General. I don't believe any level of Auditor General should be silenced, and that this committee plays a huge role in that.
No, certainly we respect your role very much. Moving to something more specific, is there a danger in your view if political parties are seen to be interfering in your labor negotiations? How would that affect your ability to negotiate a deal on your own?
So I might handle that question. The importance of being able to negotiate with our employees in context of the federal government is important for us. We compete with other government departments for the skills that we need from our staff across all of our organization. The question about political interference, in all honesty, that is a concerning question, because at a fundamental level, we need to be independent, and we need to be able to negotiate in a fair context with our employees. We recognize, though, that we are part of the federal public service, and that what happens at our table affects the public service. What happens in the public service affects our table. So we understand that reality. We're competing for the same staff.
Thank you. Earlier you said, and this is a different line of questioning now, earlier you talked about, actually in response to some of the questions put by MP Dong, on the attrition that was very common in your office from 2005 to 2015. How did that work? How did that outcome, I should say, which was a result of lack of funding, how did that affect the work of the office? What was the overall impact on not just the work, but I suppose democracy in general?
So the information that was provided to the committee was helpful. The fact that we went from 577 employees down to 547 employees over the 10 years shows that there was a gradual reduction in the number of staff that we could have. There was an erosion, if you will, in our ability to maintain staffing levels. As we worked through that 10-year period, what we saw was an inability to invest in some modernization on the IT front, but we also saw discretionary audits having to be scaled back. So we always had to do the financial work. It was our performance audit work that we had to reduce the numbers. What does that mean? It means that at a fundamental level, committees such as this one don't have as much material from our office for which to hold government to account on the services they provide and the money that is spent.
Thank you very much. That is the time.
Thank you.
Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, vous avez la parole pour 2 minutes 30 secondes, s'il vous plaît.
Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés, you have 2 minutes. Well, and I've got my timer on, Mr. Chair, just to let you know. On the notion, the idea that the Auditor General mentioned earlier with respect to changes necessary so that Crown corporations, which spend hundreds of millions of dollars, so they can be in a position to give people information on these expenditures. I'd like to hear from the Treasury Board. What changes would be necessary? What legislative changes would be needed in order for these Crown corporations to disclose their information in the same way that departments do? Answer. Unfortunately, I don't have any information on that subject. Question. Could you come back with that information then? Answer. Yes. Now back to the Auditor General. I'd like to continue my series of questions on best practices. Now, you mentioned that some special audits of discretionary audits of small Crown corporations were the same in scope as larger ones. Now, could you elaborate on that, please? Now, I wasn't saying that the special audits are more difficult for the larger ones. It's that the approach and method must be exact, even if there are some 30 employees or 30,000. Well, what's the impact then? Well, a lot of time is invested by our office for very little value added, in my opinion. We could put museums together, for example, because there are many aspects that are the same, and we could put that into a special audit. But there's also the scope of the special audits. It is required under legislation. So a little bit of flexibility in the scope could give us more options to look at the operations themselves with respect to, and as opposed to simply the processes. So that would help us to provide greater accountability. Thank you. Thank you.
Or for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks again to the witnesses. I'll try to be as quick and succinct as I possibly can, considering time. But for the representative from Finance, Mr. Leswick, sorry if I mispronounced your name, but public servants, at least in my conversations with many, are concerned. Of course, it's a big issue related to the budget that's going to be upcoming soon. We're having a fall economic statement, and we know that there's signals from the Ministry of Finance in relation to possible cuts within the ministry. You know, we heard 25%. Workers are nervous. Does that mean workers could see an impact given the mandate from the Minister of Finance?
Thanks for the question. I don't really want to speculate on the potential for a worker employee impact, but I mean, what was clearly written in the last budget was that the government intended to pursue a strategic policy review of government spending, and it outlined its expenditure reduction target in that context. It also committed to delaying or deferring planned spending that it had set out in previous budgets and updates, so it intends to execute on that. But certainly don't want to speculate in terms of how that may impact the public service employee count.
So, simply put, you're not certain, or you believe there may be?
Simply put, I don't want to speculate on any of that, to be honest.
So, no comment about the entire public service and our finances?
No, I'm making a comment. Just to be clear, thank you for the question. I appreciate it, but I'm not here to say that I'm uncertain, but I do not want to be speculating on the government's intention in terms of how it wants to handle program growth or government operations growth in future budgets.
Okay, so maybe ask this in a different way. The federal strategic policy that you just mentioned, will it impact ministries' budgets?
The government has outlined its expenditure reduction commitment in the context of that review. It is committed to a profile of savings associated with that review that equals $1 billion in fiscal year 24-25, rising to $3 billion in fiscal year 27-28 and ongoing. It intends to achieve those reduction targets.
And that would include the surplus from selling of real estate?
The government will have to outline how it achieved those reduction targets in a future budget in order to satisfy that commitment. So again, I don't want to speculate on what that may or may not include.
I see. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. And my final question is for the Auditor General. In the instance, we heard a lot of testimony today. In your role, particularly bargaining with the public servants in your office, what if that fence wasn't there? Would have there been a strike?
Ms. Hogan, can you just hold that thought for 1 second? I'm going to come right back to you. I've just been told I'm told that your time is pretty much up, but I think you're going to get more time, that there's no other questions from the government members, and there's no other question from the official opposition. Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, as-tu encore des questions?
Do you have any questions? No?
You have another 2.5 minutes, please.
Perfect. So we can maybe to the Auditor General. I have a bit more time to clarify that statement and that question. In relation to the actual strike that took place in your office, the impact to service work and our job at the public accounts to actually have predictable audits at the time we needed to. And you, I believe, being an independent office, would know that how critical that is for Parliament and the importance of your role in the perseverance of democracy, as my colleague from the bloc put it. Given that that strike was there, it's my perspective that we should try in all avenues to prevent further strikes in the future to affect the work of the government, in particular independent offices. You mentioned in your comments that the President of the Treasury Board, in comment 5, quote, that you say the President of the Treasury Board gives our office its mandate for collective bargaining. This mandate establishes the maximum amount pay and specifies other terms and conditions of employment that may be offered to your office during collective bargaining. And so you also mentioned that your role in that was, in some sense, limited, this fence. Can you describe what that fence limited you to do in relation to those things? And if that fence wasn't there, would it have been resolved differently?
I know that we would have liked to have been able to provide all of our employees with, that were in the bargaining unit, a wage grid. We had done that across the rest of the office. We believe that it is the right step to make in order to simplify pay and minimize errors in the future. So had we had more latitude, we would have liked to have given every employee in that group a wage grid, which we could not do with the original mandate.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Hogan. That concludes my questions.
You have a minute left.
Oh, a minute left. Well, I got what I needed there. I think it's really important, I think, to note that for particular the public service, these wage grids are in particular to the Office of the Auditor General critical for people's understanding of fairness. And so I think knowing that and knowing more context, I know I can't say the whole context in the meeting, but I think it's something critically important, in particular for the Treasury Board to consider and look at. And it's something that I think is incumbent on the government, considering the rate of inflation and the actual loss of employees that we're seeing across the public service due to poor wages. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for your speedy questions today. I want to thank our witnesses in particular. Mr. Diot, thank you for joining us virtually. Mr. Leswick, thank you for appearing today. And to our friends from the Auditor's Office, thank you very much for both coming in today as well and sharing all your thoughts with us. I'm going to excuse the witnesses. I'd like members just to stay behind for a couple minutes. I just have a few announcements. We do have time if there's further things to discuss, but for now I'll excuse the witnesses. I'm just going to suspend for 30 seconds. We'll still need translation services, so everyone else has got to stay in their seats except the witnesses. Thank you. And I'll come back in about 30 seconds. After the recess, we're going to hear from the Auditor General on the reports she has tabled that day. That will be in camera, I believe, Mr. Clerk. Is that right? Yes, it is. As well, we'll have a briefing with the Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation for the second hour. On November the 18th, we have Public Accounts 2022 review. I'm told in the past there were two presentations, one in camera and then one in public. We can discuss that today, or we can discuss it Friday if we want to continue that practice. Then there are a couple days to fill, actually only 3. We do have Mr. Dong Hydrogen on the docket, and that's not going to go anywhere, so I just want to reassure you. We've had to move it out just because of the availability. We want to make sure we have the right deputy ministers there, so we have the people that you want to hear from and all of us want to hear from. And then it looks like the last 3 weeks we'll be able to turn to some draft reports as well. And I'm just going to leave the 16th open for now, either for business or to review any other matters before the Christmas holiday. So we really just have 3 holes to fill, but I'm proposing we do it Friday in a subcommittee, but I'm at your mercy. That's my first announcement. Any comments on that?
Well, I'd just like to mention that the reports were tabled on the 15th, but before the 15th, it's difficult for us to establish a calendar that's consistent.
It's true. C'est bien correct, ça.
That is true. We do have the subject matter of those reports, but until we've seen them, Well, that is true, but it's very difficult for the clerk to organize our calendar or timetable in 2 or 3 days. We need to give him more lead time because if we only give witnesses 48 or 72 hours advance notice, it's difficult. Now, I know Mr. Desjardins.
Interest in the marine safety, for example, there are, if you want to stick with just the reports that have been tabled, you will see there are a number in the draft worksheet that are still outstanding. So I'll leave it up to the subcommittee to decide if they just want to limit themselves to reports that have been tabled. I think we should consider ones that are coming based on the topics, but that is up for the committee to decide, because there are more reports coming. It sounds like December, early December. Is it 4 reports roughly? About 4 reports. So.
Well, I have a question, a follow-up question then. So if at subcommittee then we make some decisions on the 16th or the 17th of November, would that leave us enough time then, Mr. Clerk, to invite people for the 22nd then? That would be a five days advance notice.
Je ne peux pas répondre pour les
Well, I can't answer for the departments. It depends on their availability, but we've also got the officers responsible for the audits. These are always deputy ministers, so with 2 days' notice, it's very difficult. Now, I always work at the committee's request. If the committee makes a decision, I act accordingly. But bear in mind that with the resources that we have for hybrid meetings, having additional meetings outside of our regular times, which are Tuesday and Friday, that's also very difficult.
Cela répond à votre question.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So I think just reviewing some of the list of the studies that we could take up, I think if we can find a way to, I guess just kind of what Natalie was mentioning about the timing.
Well, look, let me address that. I mean, again, you can come back in the subcommittee, and if you decide, if everyone wants to decide they just want to stick to what's been public, you can do that. There are 4 coming, and then it looks like a month after there's going to be another 4 as well. So, and as you know, it does take some time to go through line by line. But let's save that discussion for Friday. We can consider what's on offer and what's coming. Good. I have one more point, so you're not excused yet. Any other comments? No. Okay. So I've been working with the auditor's office to settle on a date for our meeting with them off the parliamentary precinct, and I've canvassed most of you, not all of you, but I'm hoping this is going to work. I'm proposing November the 14th, which is the Monday we come back, to meet up at around 4:30, because the people I've canvassed to date are clear from committee. There is a committee that Ms. Bradford has at 6:30, and will be done by around 6:30. You'll be able to at least, you might have to slip out a few minutes early, but my proposal is to start 4:05 and just before 6:30 or at 6:30. Is that okay? Oui. Puis ça serait au Québec.
And it'll be in Quebec. That's for the meal? A Monday night. Yes, because after that, it's even more difficult. For Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursday, people go back home. Well, we have traditions to have holidays on Monday evenings. Well, I don't know how to respond to that now. I'm not happy that we have to sit here on Fridays. And like you, I try to... Oh, no, I meant Mondays. They're closed. Many of them are closed on Monday nights. Well, I found one, though. And it's private, so, it would be good. Oh, I thought you were talking about the Bloc Québécois. No, we work 24/7, so we're good to go. No, I found a place, and it's got a private room in it, so it's
offices, so you can put it in your calendars. But that is Monday, November 14th. Pardon me. I'm going to propose we meet up between 4:30 and 5. Have a real start for 5 o'clock. So don't aim for 5 and get there at 5:10, because we'll be changing Mrs. Bradford, and we'll wrap up after 90 minutes. Okay. With your permission, I'd like to adjourn this meeting, unless there's any other comments. No, meeting is adjourned, and we'll have a subcommittee Friday.